Hey everyone, welcome to an NFL video. This one we're going over my first thoughts for week 6 of the NFL season on DraftKings. We will also build a lineup together as we go through it. Now this won't be like an advanced stats video. I kind of do that on my core plays video tomorrow, but this is just pretty much a first glance at the slate, so then we'll work through it. Then we'll also go over my cash rankings for week 5 and my cash game lineup that I use because I'd like to be transparent with you guys. Then we'll go over what went right, what went wrong, and then we'll go from there. So before we continue, if you could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets I build every single week, links in the description below for my Patreon. And let's get right into it. So first, let's go over these my stuff for week 5. So this is just a very generic part of my spreadsheet. I do projections and a whole bunch of advanced statistics on the other pieces, but this is just my cash game rankings tab. So in my own personal lineup, I made a big oopsie. I wish I didn't do it. I was really debating it, and I'm very upset that I did it. It was a big mistake, but we'll go over that. Still, most of the guys did pretty well. But Deshaun Watson, I had him as QB1 heading into the week. I loved the Watson-Fuller connection heading into the week. I loved them on Monday. You guys know that. I pretty much talked about them in every single video heading into the week. And yeah, Watson absolutely went bananas. He scored 44.74 DraftKings points. He was 28 for 33. He only had 5 incompletions, 426 yards, 5 touchdowns. The guy was insane. Also added 4 for 47 on the ground. I believe he was the most high-owned quarterback in cash games. It was him and Matt Ryan. They were very chalky. So, yeah, if you had Deshaun Watson, you were very happy. I know we typically don't like to spend up for quarterbacks in cash games, but I was all for it this week. Sometimes you got to make exceptions, and Deshaun Watson absolutely balled out versus Atlanta. I had Kyler Murray at number 2, who he didn't absolutely go nuts, but he was still fine. And he did not throw a passing touchdown, but the thing is, he gives us such a safe floor because he has rushing ability as well. So he was 20 for 32 through the air, had 253 passing yards, but he also added 10 for 93 on the ground and a rushing touchdown. That's the thing I like about him every single week. He gives you that rushing upside, which gives him a nice floor and a decently high ceiling. I mean, if you can score 25 DraftKings points without throwing a touchdown as a quarterback, you're going to be one of the better DFS plays every single week, and we're going to talk about him later a lot because, let me tell you, Kyler Murray is in an awesome spot. He gets the same matchup Deshaun Watson did last week, so definitely going to like Kyler Murray heading into the week, but we'll talk about him then. So Carson Wentz, this is the guy that gave me a lot of trouble this week, and man, he just fit my lineup so perfect. I ended up rolling with him, and it sucked. So I think I fell in love with the team total here with the Philadelphia Eagles. They had a 29-point total. Now, I pretty much figured they were going to blow the Jets out, but I was hoping that's because Carson Wentz throws a few touchdowns and then they can run the ball. But the defense, man, they scored twice. So, I mean, it pretty much just made Wentz non-existent because he did not have to do much they didn't have to stay in the game. They were just way ahead. The defensive touchdowns really hurt. I think if they didn't keep scoring defensive touchdowns, Wentz could at least throw 2 or 3 touchdowns, which really was what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting a huge game from Wentz, but I thought he'd get it done in cash games, and he just fit my lineup perfect. So, and it sucks. I really wish I went down to Matt Ryan, who I did have 4th. But yeah, that was one big mistake on my part this week. But Matt Ryan, he absolutely balled out. He went nuts. Oh, I should say, Carson Wentz only had, 12 DraftKings points. And that's not going to get it done. So big L on Carson Wentz. But Matt Ryan, he was the second highest scoring quarterback on the slate. He was in the same game as Deshaun Watson as that game went over 80 points scored. Everyone loved that game because of the Vegas total. 2 pretty bad defenses. Atlanta's defense is much worse. Both offenses have some firepower. Deshaun Watson, Hopkins, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Austin Hooper. So it was a very exciting game for fantasy. Matt Ryan ended up getting 35.9 fantasy points. He was 32 for 46, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Had 7 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well on that QB sneak, which at first they called it a fumble. I think they called it a fumble, but he was over the goal line anyway. So Matt Ryan had a big day, and if you played him, you were very happy at only 5,900. I probably should have been a lot higher than I was on Matt Ryan. I probably should have had him 2nd or 3rd for my cash game rankings, so that was another mistake. Then Andy Dalton, he was awful, especially in that first half of the game. Didn't he have like 22 passing yards in the first half? It was bad. He ended up finishing with 18 fantasy points, which 5,700 you're not mad about, but Matt Ryan for 2 more scored 30-some points, so you were probably a little upset with that. Now, the loss of John Ross definitely hurt Andy Dalton, but still, he tossed 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, which really, I mean, you're going to be fine with that on most slates. It's just that, Matt Ryan and Deshaun Watson went absolutely nuts, so it made you feel bad about playing Andy Dalton. If it was a regular slate and that didn't happen, probably not too upset about playing Andy Dalton. And then running backs, Zeke, he was a big disappointment. So game flow went the exact opposite of how I thought it would. I was assuming the Cowboys would get, the Packers didn't have Devontae Adams. I know they got a good defense, and they still got Aaron Rodgers. But without Devontae Adams, I thought they might struggle a little bit on offense. The Cowboys would try to zone in on stopping Aaron Jones. Obviously, that didn't happen. But Dak Prescott was really bad in this game. They were not fading Zeke as much as I would have liked them to. Now, he did save his day with a late touchdown. He ended up getting, 17 fantasy points, but he still had he had the cold snowflake on the side of him if you're looking on DraftKings. Only had 12 rushing attempts, because I was expecting like 20 to 25 rushing attempts. If you were going to tell me before the week that Zeke's only going to get 12 rushing attempts, I definitely would not have liked him, but just game flow did not end up working out. He was constantly open in the flats, and Dak would just refuse to throw it to him. Ended up scoring 17 points for that late touchdown, but if you paid up that much for Zeke, you were probably not happy. I was just in love with the matchup. Everything made sense, but you only got 14 touches, so what are you going to do? David Johnson, now if he got into the end zone, he would have had a pretty good game, but unfortunately he did not. He ended up having a back problem, which took him out of the game late in the game, when then Chase Edmonds had a nice long touchdown. But, David Johnson was fine. He had 17 carries for 91 yards, 3 catches for 65 yards on 5 targets. That's not a bad fantasy day, and 18 points without scoring a touchdown. It's pretty solid. I really like the floor he had versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati's one of the worst team, or is the worst team in the league versus the running back position this season. So he made a ton of sense. He's heavily involved in the passing game. He's another guy we're going to talk a lot about heading into this week because he gets a fantastic matchup. So, yeah, David Johnson, he was fine and, knock your socks off or anything. Christian McCaffrey, though, I was definitely locking him in this week. I know he's ranked third, but I was locking in the first 3 running backs I had on here. I mean, it was just no doubt about it for me because with all the value that opened up at receiver and tight end this week, I thought you had to pay up for 3 running backs, which, you kind of did. Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey, you definitely had to pay for him, but you didn't have to pay up for Aaron Jones. He was more mid-price, but anyway, Christian McCaffrey went absolutely bonkers. This is one of the craziest scoring slates of the year. You had to score I think what was the winning Millie Maker lineup? Wasn't it like 330 something, or was it 350? I forget. I don't personally play in the Millie Maker, but yeah, it was like an insane score. I've never seen anything like it, but yeah, McCaffrey ended up getting a 50-burger, 19 rushing attempts, 176 yards, had that super long touchdown. Had 2 touchdowns on the ground, 6 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. The guy is RB1 every single week. On the bright side, I don't know if we want to call it a bright side, but he's not in the main slate this week because he's in that early London game, so I guess we don't have to worry about jamming him in with that expensive salary, but yeah, he's not in the main slate, so we're not going to have to worry about playing him or fading him. I personally would probably never want to fade Christian McCaffrey because the dude's an absolute beast. So yeah, he was fine. Not fine. He was absolutely amazing. Leonard Fournette, he put in another solid showing. He ended up getting 26 fantasy points, which was 6th best on the day out of all running backs, and he was only 6,400. Thing about him, he gets volume. That's the most important thing in fantasy football. And he got 23 rushing attempts, got 108 yards, did find the end zone, had 4 catches for 29 yards. He's been constantly involved in the passing game this season, ended up having 7 targets. So Leonard Fournette, you were very happy if you played him, and he was much cheaper than the guys above him. So, and then the next guy, Aaron Jones. My God, did he absolutely smash the world. If you played Aaron Jones, McCaffrey, Will Fuller, Deshaun Watson together, you were winning all the money this week. Aaron Jones got 52 fantasy points. That is absolutely insane. Had 19 rushing attempts for 107 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also had 7 receptions for 75 yards on 8 targets. I loved Aaron Jones coming into the week because he was the only guy there. No Devontae Adams, no Jamal Williams. He was going to get the ball, and he was heavily involved in this game. He had 26 touches, and he did great with them. 52 fantasy points now. He's not going to do it every single week, obviously, but as long as he's the only back there, he is definitely going to be in play, and that price tag of $5,900 was very nice as well. So on to the wide receivers, I was a little too low on Michael Thomas. Now, I did not like Michael Thomas, but I did not think he was going to get 44 fantasy points. I thought he was going to be fine, but man, he went absolutely nuts. But let's talk about my number 1 guy. It was Auden Tate. And, he did what he needed to do for cash games. He was 80% owned, so it pretty much did not matter what he did whatsoever because, he's 80% owned. Everyone had him. But at 3,500, he got us that 11 fantasy points, which is not too bad. He actually did drop a touchdown. He could have had 2 touchdowns. He even had a better day, but still had 3 catches, 26 yards on 6 targets, and a touchdown. You were pretty happy if you played him at 3,500. That's all you really need, and it allowed you to fit in guys like McCaffrey's. Well, you weren't too happy if you played Zeke, but, Deshaun Watson, David Johnson, those kind of guys. Larry Fitzgerald, that was disappointing. I actually thought he was going to have a very good game versus the versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Had 8 targets, which, it's fine. Had 6 catches, which is fine, but he only had 58 yards, not getting to the end zone. He had that screen pass right before the half, which was a really dumb play. He could have gotten to the end zone. He would have been a lot happier. Ended up not happening. I actually thought he was going to be a little bit higher owned than he was. He was actually relatively low owned compared to a lot of people got up to Michael Thomas. That was one of my biggest mistakes heading into the week. I like Larry Fitzgerald. I like the 600 savings I got off Michael Thomas. But I really did not expect Michael Thomas to get 40 fantasy points. I thought he'd probably get about 15 to 20. Did not see a big 40-burger happening, but, it happens. Will Fuller. You guys know I loved Will Fuller heading into the week. It's not like he was low owned or anything. He was, fairly heavily owned. I believe he was 30% in cash games, but Will Fuller, he went nuts. Everything said to play him heading into the week. He scored 56 DraftKings points, 14 catches on 16 targets, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, got tackled on the 1 yard line twice, and then one time he was thrown into the end zone, and it looked like he might have got the ball, but he tripped heading to the sideline. So, he could have had a 5 touchdown day. It was just Will Fuller's world yesterday, and we were all living in it. Went absolute nuts. I said if Deshaun Watson got time to throw, he was going to hook up on Will Fuller with that deep bomb. He ended up getting that deep bomb. Then he had a couple short yardage touchdowns, and he looked great. He got the speed. Atlanta's secondary cannot guard the long ball. They just don't have a good defense, period, especially with the loss of their starting safety. So Will Fuller was a smash play at 4,500. His price came up to 6K this week, so that really sucks. But it was fun while it lasted. Not going to be chalked this week, but if you want to take another shot at him heading into the week, you can. But Will Fuller week was fantastic, and I was all over him, and I hope you guys were as well. Tyler Boyd, he had a pretty good game too. He had 31 DraftKings points, saved the day on a long touchdown near the end of the game, but hey, they all count the same. Had 14 targets, 10 catches, 123 yards, and 1 touchdown, 31 DraftKings points. That's pretty darn solid, 6,500. No John Ross, so I figured he'd be more involved in the offense. So if you play Tyler Boyd, you're probably pretty happy. And then Michael Thomas, I had him 5th, which I wish I had him 2nd or 1st. That was a mistake on my part. Like, my 2 mistakes this week was not being as high on Matt Ryan and Michael Thomas as I should have been. So yeah, but Michael Thomas, he went absolutely nuts with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. He had 13 targets, 11 catches, 182 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Made a mess of that Tampa Bay secondary, which is not very good whatsoever. So if you played Michael Thomas, you were definitely happy. He was very high owned in cash. He was a little higher owned than I expected. I figured he'd be chalky, but made a mistake there. Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Wentz, that's gonna haunt me for this week. And then going to the the tight end position. Tight end position absolutely sucked this week. I just ate the chalk on Tyler Eifert, but you didn't really have to have anyone to do anything good. You didn't really have to play anyone good at tight end position this week because highest scoring tight end on the slate was Zach Ertz at 6K, and he scored 16 points, which, if you're paying 6K for Zach Ertz, you probably sacrifice somewhere else. So you pretty much just didn't have to do anything at tight end this week. Austin Hooper was fine at 13.6. But yeah, I had Tyler Eifert ranked number 1 just versus Arizona. He's just getting eaten alive by tight ends. He ended up scoring 3.4 points. Hey, at least he didn't get a goose egg. If you played Tyler Eifert in cash, it probably didn't hurt you as long as you had all the right other pieces. Because Austin Hooper, he was fine. He continues to have a good season. He had 13 fantasy points. Mark Andrews got 9. Greg Olsen. Yeah, and Greg Olsen had a very bad game as well. And Zach Ertz was actually the highest scoring tight end on the slate. So, really, tight end was just pretty much a wash this week. Darren Waller was fine as well. Wasn't really on him. Noah Fant, I know people were talking about him at 2,800. He didn't really do anything, but really, tight end was pretty much just a whatever position this week. As for defenses, actually, defense is a pretty good position for me. The Patriots, they did fine. They just continued to do good. I actually had them projected for 14 points, and they ended up scoring 14 points. So they did fine. The Panthers' defense was very popular. They ended up scoring 14 points, had that sack fumble. Panthers' defense continues to do very well at a cheap price. Chargers' defense, they ended up getting that punt return touchdown with Desmond King. They got 14 points. I feel like every defense scored 14 points this week. The Steelers' defense, which is the one I ended up using because they were just so cheap, they did very well. Lamar Jackson continues to regress after his first 2 starts of the season. Steelers' defense at 2,100, they actually put up 11 points, which is fantastic at that salary. Ended up getting 5 sacks, 3 interceptions. So even though they gave up 26 points, they were still fine because they got those sacks and turnovers. And then the Eagles defense, if you played them, you were extremely happy as they outscored most quarterbacks at 35 fantasy points, had 2 defensive touchdowns, racked up 10 sacks, 2 picks, 1 fumble. Absolutely insane game. Only allowed 61 passing yards and 67 rushing yards for only 128 total yards and 6 points against. So if you played the Eagles, they absolutely smashed, and you were probably pretty happy. So for my main lineup, I only play one lineup a week. I went Carson Wentz at quarterback. That sucked. Zeke, definitely was not too happy about playing Zeke. I mean, that touchdown was nice at the end, but still I was looking for a lot more points. Christian McCaffrey, I thought he was pretty much a lock. He got 50 fantasy points. Larry Fitzgerald, disappointing. This is not cash game ownership anyway. This is one of my single entries. Will Fuller, he obviously went nuts. You had to have him. On Tate, 11 points, did what he needed to do. Tyler Eifert, whatever. David Johnson, he was fine, did not get into the end zone. Steelers defense got 11 fantasy points. That was good for 192 points. I mean, it was pretty much in some contests this cash, some didn't for cash games. So it just really depended on where you were. As for the winning lineup in one of my contests, and again, I'm telling you guys, find these small entry contests on DraftKings. I mean, you do not have to score that much points to win a lot of money. If you just enter a whole bunch of these contests, you will win a lot more money. Because if you score 253 points in the Million Maker, guess what? That sucks. You're not going to win barely anything. And in this one, you can win first place. And if you play, there's a whole bunch of contests it costs $27 to enter, $50 to enter, 100, 150, 200. I don't know how much you guys play each week. There's $9 ones, even $3, $5 ones. If you just scroll all the way down, there's 100 people in them. Some of them have 45 people, 60. I mean, that's where I would recommend to play. I mean, you don't have to listen to me, but it's just what I would recommend. And this guy's lineup ended up scoring 253 points, had Matt Ryan, 35 fantasy points. Zeke was in there as well. Zeke is not winning the Million Maker, but you can still win GPPs in these kind of contests. That's why I recommend to play them. Chris, you don't have to have these super low-owned punts that no one plays except for the Million Maker contest, because guess what? People in these small single entries are not going to play that. You're playing against most of the pros like EM2, Chipotle, and some other guys off the top of my head, Osimo, all those guys. And they're not going to play these stupid plays in single entries. You don't have to be super, super sneaky in these kind of contests. You just got to play the right plays and hope the ones you play and the ones they don't play, you got to hope they beat them out. Because a lot of the lineups are going to look similar. Just have to hope your lower-owned guys do better than their lower-owned guys. And then he had Curtis Samuel, which is pretty much just a throw-in. Cortland Sutton ended up having that 70-yard touchdown. Austin Hooper, Aaron Jones, obviously he had to be in the winning lineup, and then the Bengals defense, which I assume is just a throw-in. So that's going to be it for the Week 5 recap. Let's get into draft. All right, my laptop actually died, so I had to plug my laptop back in, so I'm going to have to edit this in somehow. But anyway, let's start into the DraftKings lineup portion of this video. I'm not going to talk about every single guy on the slate. I already built a lineup before this, so I'm kind of talking my way through it. Now, it's just the first look lineup and my first thoughts. This is not going to be any advanced research or anything. I'll do that in my core plays video, which will probably come out tomorrow. So anyway, I have 3 main targets at the quarterback position heading into the week, because when I first look at the slate, obviously I go to Vegas first to see, what's going to be the high-scoring games projectedly. And there's 2 games that stand out a ton to me. So the first one is going to be Kansas City versus Houston. This is a 55.5 point total, which is absolutely massive. And we got 2 good offenses going up against 2 pretty below average defenses. So points are going to be scored. Houston's just coming off that 53-point outing versus the Atlanta Falcons. So it makes sense to like this game. Points should be scored as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy. It should be pretty back and forth, and I really like this game for fantasy. Problem is, a lot of these guys in this game are very expensive. Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, as long as Tyreek Hill plays, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. So it's not like there's a lot of value there. But the next game that I have a ton of interest in, there's actually a lot of value in. We have the Arizona Cardinals facing off versus the Atlanta Falcons. And this is a 52-point total in Vegas, which is absolutely massive. We have two games this week that are over 50 points in Vegas, which is, that's huge. And it's only a 1.5 point spread. So this should be a pretty back and forth game. Looks like it won't be a blowout. So I expect a lot of points to be scored. We got 2 bad offenses. We have 2 bad defenses. And this game should be played at a pretty fast pace. So I have a ton of interest in this game the most. And let me tell you, if you are doing very well in the early portion of Sunday and you don't have much exposure to the 4 o'clock games, I would not feel very good, because this game is going to be extremely, extremely chalky. It's going to have most of the ownership on these slates. So I would definitely want to get some exposure to it, because like I said, it's in the 4 o'clock game, and you're not going to miss out on these in the slate game hammer pretty much. So my 3 favorite quarterbacks into the week are going to be Deshaun Watson. This is in no particular order. Deshaun Watson at 6,700, coming off that 50-point outing. Kyler Murray, 6,500, and then Matt Ryan at 6,400. So I'm not going to be dumpster diving quarterback this week. I'm going to be spending up a little bit, but I think it's the way you're going to have to go this week. So Deshaun Watson, in this lineup, it's either going to be between Kyler Murray and Matt Ryan. I like Deshaun Watson a ton. He's got great weapons. He's got Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins. He even hooked up with some of the tight ends last week. He's got rushing upside as well. But I want to save a little bit though. I want to live in this Kyler Murray and Matt Ryan range. And for this lineup, you can go with either because we have enough salary to do it, to fit both in. But let me talk about Kyler Murray first. So he just continues to put up good fantasy game after good fantasy game. Now, it's not like he's gone absolutely nuts this season yet. I mean, but he has such a safe floor. And he hasn't scored a passing touchdown the last 2 weeks. And he still scored 17 fantasy points and 25 fantasy points. It just shows how good of a floor he has. He gets it done on the ground. He had 2 rushing touchdowns 2 weeks in a row. And I told you guys, if he's going to start getting rushing touchdowns, it's just going to boost his floor and ceiling even more. They throw the ball a ton. Coming into the week, they were averaging about 42 passing attempts per game. That's going to come down a little bit with only a 32 passing attempts versus Cincinnati. But they played a very high pace. You got some decent options on this offense. Kyler Murray can run. He can throw. He's got David Johnson as long as he's fine. And Larry Fitzgerald. If Christian Kirk comes back, that's also a boost for him. I'm not sure if he's going to. I tried to do an update search on him. Didn't really get any definitive news, so he's up in the air. I probably had to lean towards him not playing. It looked pretty bad, but the coach did say it's better than he initially thought, so that's a good sign for him at least. But Kyler Murray going up against the Atlanta Falcons, they got absolutely shellacked versus Deshaun Watson last week. I'm sure a lot of you played Deshaun Watson, so yeah, Kyler Murray's got a fantastic matchup versus the Falcons, who are missing a key part of their secondary, so I think Kyler Murray's in a smash spot here. We're going to throw him in the lineup. And I also like Matt Ryan quite a bit. I mean, you really can't go wrong with him or Kyler Murray. And, he's another guy. He's throwing the ball a ton. 46 pass attempts week 1, 43 week 2, 34 week 3, 53 week 4, 46 week 5. They're going to throw the ball a ton, and it's a great matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, who are giving up a ton of points versus the quarterback position this season. They are 4th worst in the league, giving up 24.8 DraftKings points per game to the position. I mean, they made Kyle Allen look tremendous the other, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, Matt Ryan, he's got all the weapons in the world. He's got Austin Hooper, Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman out of the backfield as well. So, Matt Ryan should have a pretty good game here, and I like both a lot. So, don't think I'm heavily leaning towards Matt Ryan or Kyler Murray, or one or the other. I think they're both fine, just whoever fits your lineup better. So, I guess if you have more Arizona weapons, maybe go with Kyler Murray. If you have more Atlanta weapons, go with Matt Ryan. So, actually, let's fill the quarterback position out at the end, and then we'll see what I like better. Actually, for right now, let's just throw in Matt Ryan. Just because right now. So we'll see how it looks at the end. But for the running back position, I don't think we have to absolutely spend all the way up top for running back position this week. Christian McCaffrey is off the slate, which sucks because he's a free 30 to 50 fantasy points every single week. But it also gives us some salary relief as well because we don't have to spend like $9,000 for him. So Zeke, don't love the matchup versus the Jets. Dalvin Cook, he's got a tough matchup versus Philly. Alvin Kamara, the Jaguars just got absolutely shredded by Christian McCaffrey. So, I mean, Kamara might have a pretty good game here, but $8,000, he has not really shown. I mean, he has ceiling games. It's just $8,000, I don't feel great about it because, I mean, so far this season, he's got 23 points week 1. That's with Drew Brees. 7 points week 2. 37 points versus Seattle, which obviously you love. That's what Alvin Kamara can do. I mean, he can make big plays happen as long as he's involved. Week 4, though, versus Dallas, 11 points. Week 5 versus Tampa, which, they've been great versus the running back position this season. Only 16 points, which, I mean, it's not terrible, but at $8,000, I want like 30 points. So, don't love Kamara this week versus Jacksonville. But I do like David Johnson a lot versus the Falcons. We know the Falcons always struggle versus pass-catching running backs. And that's what David Johnson can do. He's heavily involved in the passing game. He had 5 targets last week, but week before that, 11 targets. Week before that, 9 targets. And he hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 weeks, but still, he scored 21 points and 18 points. And that's just the safe floor he offers us with his involvement in the passing game and what he can do on the ground as well. Last week, he had 91 yards on the ground, 65 through the air. His back locked up on him late in the game, which gave him that Chase Edmonds came in and got that touchdown. But I think David Johnson's in for a pretty big game here. It should be a pretty back and forth game. He's game script proof, so it's going to be in the game no matter what. And I think he's going to have a pretty good game. It's a great matchup, so definitely like David Johnson. I think he's going to be popular, and you also don't have to pay absolute top dollar for him either, so I do like that. And for the next running back, there's plenty of running backs on the slate, but I do like Mark Ingram a lot at 6,600 going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Ravens are going to be 11.5-point favorites at home versus Cincy, which I think leads to a perfect game script for Mark Ingram. He should have a huge day here. I think we see more of a Week 3 performance versus Kansas City kind of day. Now I don't think he's going to score 38 DraftKings points, but I do think he's a safe bet for 20 points in this matchup. The Bengals are giving up the most points per game to the running position this season at a 39 points per game, which is worse in the league, giving up over 100 rushing yards per game. Just getting absolutely smashed. So I do like Mark Ingram. He's only 6,600. He's not heavily involved in the passing game, but he does see consistent targets. Not like there are a lot of targets, but still helps boost his floor at least a tiny bit. And I think he gets into the end zone at least once or twice here. So do like Mark Ingram. The Ravens should steamroll the Cincinnati Bengals at home. So we're going to plug him in. 6,600. I don't hate that. Our 2 running backs don't break the bank, and I think they're pretty safe this week as well. As for the wide receiver position, so the top guys have been kind of disappointing. Not Michael Thomas last week, but Julio Jones. He had a pretty down game versus the Houston Texans, and they scored a ton of points in that game, so that was discouraging to see. Michael Thomas balled out. DeAndre Hopkins, though, after a solid start to the season, he's not done much whatsoever. I mean, they scored 53 real-life points last week, and he didn't do that much. So, I mean, it sucks to see, but I guess defenses are just keying in on him, and, Will Fuller, he might run free again versus Kansas City, but yeah, it's tough. I mean, if you're doing GPP game stacks, obviously I'd get exposure to Hopkins, but I don't really want to pay $7,400 for him. But could bounce back. His ownership's going to be lower because everyone's getting off the train. So I can understand when to play Hopkins. But a guy I like a lot this week is Cooper Kupp. I imagine he's going to be one of my highest rated receivers on the week, and the dude is just a straight baller. I mean, he is nearing the elites of the elites for fantasy, from a fantasy perspective. Ever since week 1, he's scored at least 20 points each game. So week 2, 20 points versus New Orleans, 9 targets. Week 3, 12 targets, got 36 DraftKings points. Week 4 versus Tampa, he had 15 targets, 29 fantasy points. Week 5 versus Seattle, 17 targets, 29 fantasy points. He has 4 straight games of over 100 yards, has 4 touchdowns in that span. I think Cooper Kupp is one of the safest plays week in, week out. He's going to get you double-digit targets. He's Jared Goff's guy. They got a great chemistry together. He's going to always throw him the ball. It's just a matter if it's an accurate ball or not, which it tends to not be accurate. But Cooper Kupp can get open. He's a great route runner. He's got a great matchup in the slot versus Kwan Williams. So I think Cooper Kupp's in for a huge week this week. So I like plugging him in. I think he's a good staple of this lineup. And then for the next receiver position, we're going to have to spend down a little bit. And there's really not much I love in this mid-range anyway. Adam Thielen going up against the Philly defense actually makes a lot of sense. He got the squeaky wheel narrative ended up working out very well last week. He had 35 DraftKings points, so don't mind Adam Thielen whatsoever. But again, I don't want to talk about every single guy because I don't want to make this an hour-long video. But I'm liking this. Well, I like Larry Fitzgerald as well. Will Fuller could have a nice, I almost said bounce back. I could have a nice, what do you want to call it? He could have a nice encore versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously not going to score 56 DraftKings points, but I mean, I don't hate him, but 6K, price jumped up 1,500. McLaurin versus Miami, that's fine. Stephon Diggs gets a good matchup. Alshon Jeffrey, Calvin Ridley, Robert Woods, Michael Gallup had a huge game versus the Green Bay Packers last week. But I actually like DJ Chark a ton heading into this week, going up against the New Orleans Saints, who are giving up the 7th most DraftKings points per game to wide receiver position this season. They've just been getting smoked, and their secondary has not looked that strong. And DJ Chark, he's been doing great this season. Week 1, 27 DraftKings points. Week 2, 18 DraftKings points. Week 3, 17 DraftKings points. Week 4, 8 DraftKings points. Week 5, 39 fantasy points. So he's the wide receiver one on this offense. He has 5 touchdowns on the season, 485 passing yards. He's averaging 97 yards per game. 5,500, I think he's going to be pretty high owned, but yeah, I love DJ Chark this week. I think the good times continue here, and I think Chark balls out. So 5,500, I like that price tag, and I think a lot of people are as well. Christian Kirk, if he ends up playing, I definitely have interest in him at only 5,200. Jarvis Landry, not in love with that play. Courtland Sutton had the big game last week, but really not interested in any of these guys. I don't mind Auden Tate, though, but the guy I want to talk about is Mohamed Sanu at 4,500. I think he makes a lot of sense this week, and if I like Matt Ryan, I have to like his pass catchers. And I don't have Julio Jones, so I have to like at least one of his other receivers, which I think Calvin Ridley's fine, but I'm not really a big Calvin Ridley guy. But Mohamed Sanu, he's Mr. Consistent pretty much. I know week 2 is a bad game versus Philly, but week 1, 10 points. Week 3, 13 points. Week 4, 18 points. Week 5, 15 points. He's been very consistent. He sees consistent targets, has not seen less than 5 targets in a game. So he's going to be involved. He's pretty much always on the field. So like Mohamed Sanu here, I think he's a pretty safe play at 4,500, and I think he gets you done. I think he gets the job done at only 4,500. So don't mind going with Sanu. He's cheap exposure to that game stack. Then also at tight end, I like Austin Hooper. Now, I'm not sure if I'd play all 3 of these guys in cash, but I think in single entries it's fine because we want some good, we want at least a decent stack in the single entry to make sense for a GPP. So, but if you don't want to go all 3 Atlanta Falcons guys, you could put Kyler Murray in, so then you get the Kyler Murray, David Johnson, then you get the 2 Atlanta pass catchers, but either one works fine for me. But Austin Hooper, I know it didn't really work out with Tyler Eifert last week versus Arizona Cardinals, but we're going right back to the well here with Austin Hooper. Arizona can still not guard the tight end position. They're giving up the most points per game to tight ends this season at 24 per game. And Austin Hooper, he's been very good this season. Last week he had 13 points. Week 4, 25. Week 3, 24. Week 1, he had 16. Week 2, 7, which wasn't great, but he's gonna be fine. He hasn't seen less than 6 targets each week in a week this season. 9 targets week 1, 6 week 2, 7 week 3, 11 week 4, 9 week 5. He's heavily involved in this game. It's an awesome matchup for Hooper. I think he gets into the end zone maybe once or twice, and he should have a very solid day through the air as well. The Cardinals are giving up pretty much about 100 yards per game to tight ends. So I think Austin Hooper smashes here, so I'm going to plug him in. He's going to be very high owned this week, but it's a great matchup, so do like Austin Hooper. Then for defenses, there's not a lot of defenses I like this week. The Redskins are 3,200 going up against Miami. I know it's against Miami, but still, it's the Washington Redskins. Even the Dolphins, they're 2,700. They should be all the way down here. I don't care who they are playing. They're not a good team. So not a lot to love at defense this week. I think the Titans and Broncos, one of those 2 guys, make a lot of sense. It's the lowest total on the slate at only 38.5. So it makes sense, but other than that, I don't love any of these defenses. So I'm kind of going all the way down here, and I'm thinking, the Jaguars kind of make some sense here. They're playing at home. It's a pick'em game, so they're not even underdogs. It's a 44-point spread. It's a pick'em. So I actually don't hate the Jaguars here. So only 2,200, and they're going up against a Teddy Bridgewater-led offense, which I know it looked pretty good last week with him and Michael Thomas, but it's different when they're not playing in New Orleans. So it's a tougher task on the road here. Maybe they get to Teddy Bridgewater. Now, it sucks that they're probably not going to have Jalen Ramsey, but still, they've been okay this season. They haven't killed your lineup, and only 2,200. We only need a couple points, and then we'll be fine. And I could see them picking up some ownership as well. So that leaves us with 5,100 left in the flex, and I don't really love what it leaves us because I'm not going to play Westbrook, and I'm not with DJ Chark in the same lineup because obviously that doesn't make sense. Matt Breida, I don't love it. They have 4 running backs there, so it's kind of a mess. Chris Thompson, though, he kind of stands out. Now, he's going up against Miami, but they suck versus running backs, but the thing is, he doesn't run the ball a lot. He's more of a pass catcher, pretty much. He's only seen, the most attempts he's seen in the game this season is 7 versus Chicago, and other than that, he sees about 2 to 4, so. But he's been very consistent. He's seen double-digit points in each week besides last week of this season. 14 versus Philly, 10 versus Dallas, 14 versus Chicago, 10 versus the Giants, 8 versus the Patriots. But just overall, the Dolphins are absolutely awful versus running backs. They're allowing 38 DraftKings points per game, which is second worst in the NFL, only second to Cincinnati Bengals. So I think Chris Thompson's a safe play. If Washington falls behind somehow in this game, I think Chris Thompson's a fantastic play. If not, Adrian Peterson might be the better play at 4,500 because if he sees 15 to 20 carries versus Miami, I think he's going to be fine at 4,500. I also don't mind Auden Tate down here. But just for this example, let's plug in Chris Thompson. He's been pretty consistent, and I don't love him, but he just fits the lineup. And that leaves us with 100 left. So again, if you don't want to use Matt Ryan, you could end up plugging in Kyler Murray as well, and I love both of them. I think I have no problem with either. And I think we have 4 players in that game, which I really want to get a lot of exposure to that game. We got Kyler Murray 1, David Johnson 2, Hooper 3, Sanu 4. So yeah, I don't mind that at all. And also there's correlation with David Johnson and Kyler Murray because David Johnson is a pass catcher because I don't normally love playing the same running back with my quarterback, but it's fine if he's a big pass catcher, like guys like Christian McCaffrey, David Johnson, those kind of guys. So that's going to be it for this video. If it was helpful for you guys, remember to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at ChrisPanos16. Spreadsheets available in the link in the description below. And I'll see you